Big bad builders, the time is yet running out. Oh my goodness. Here we are at Cladding Matters, of course, with Hamish McClay, my podcast partner in crime, and Lord Master, and of course Steve Day of the buildingsafetyscheme.org, who is himself a resident at Royal Artillery Keys, which is effectively a lock-in situation due to cladding issues. And today we're going to receive a number of updates about what is going on at Artillery Keys. But first of all, as is traditional, Hamish McClay.
Well, there's little for me to say, other than the fact that I experienced fairly recently, local to me here, and it's a property which was actually being modified to enable it to be changed into a house of multiple occupation, one of those HMOs. And I looked at the length of time that it took to put the scaffold. This is just on sort of a semi-detached house. It took 2 days, over 2 days, to put up the sort of scaffolding to start off with. And they eventually got the scaffolding up, and it took another week or so before they actually got the drape over the whole of the particular sort of thing. And then that actually stayed up for something like 4 months. And it's only just now they've actually sort of taken it away. But I looked at it and I could just imagine what it must be like for somebody that's actually contained within that sort of shield. You couldn't open, I guess you could open the windows up because it was a house and all the rest of it. But I can imagine there's no fresh air getting in because you've obviously got the cover sort of over it to make sure nothing's sort of falling down. But what it must actually be like, because I looked at some of those views that Steve was able to release, which showed how the scaffold was building up, sort of gradually. Now, we'll save this for a future occasion, but there are better ways of actually, rather than using full scaffolding, there are better and quicker ways of actually doing it. But as far as Royal Artillery Keys is concerned, I don't know. Steve can tell us how long it took whilst they had the build up. Now, the situation Steve has found in, he's not just a captive within there. He's a captive without a view. I don't know. Can you see through the gauze at all, Steve?
Well, we don't have the gauze up yet, but we will be. I will show you when you're ready. I'll take you on a tour out of my balcony.
Oh, please do.
Okay. Well. Thank you for that introduction, both of you. Let's do this. So basically, Royal Artillery Keys has had quite a large amount of scaffolding put up now, and it's basically taking over the outside of the building. And what I will do is I'll show you what it looks like. So I'll take my background off, and here we are, live in a building site. So this is what it looks like. So it goes right up the building.
Good Lord.
And it goes, it's obviously I'm 8 floors up. So that's, if you look, it goes right around the side of the building. And if you look at the building opposite, you can see just how high up we are. So, you can see it's about 16 floors. And this is basically what we're dealing with. And to show you what actually happens with the remediation. So this white wall here is basically all going to come off. And if we look at the building opposite, you can see, all of this wall where it's white is packed full of EPS cladding, which is a petrol-based substance. And it basically will accelerate the fire spread right up the building.
Well, it's akin to, we've discussed it many times, it's akin to firelighters, isn't it, really?
Yes, that's right. And the other thing I wanted to show you is I've actually managed to get a piece of cladding. Let me just sit back down. So this is it. So can you see that? You see this part's the outside of the wall. So this is called the render. But look inside. Do you remember your firelighters?
Oh yes.
And your barbecue? Can you see that?
Yes. That would go up a treat.
And that's basically, we set fire to that for the BBC when they came. And where's my mum? Oh, yeah. Hang on. I need to go over here.
It's Mother Day.
Yes. And so, no, but basically what's happening there is you see a petrol-based substance. Well, that is basically what we're dealing with. And that's what we've got all over our buildings. And unfortunately, we don't have any way of getting that off unless this watered down remediation standard says it's to come off.
Right.
And of course, we're only getting partially remediated, and the fire shafts, the single escape stairs for these 16-story towers are not actually getting remediated fully. They're leaving this banned combustible material on, and that condemns us to permanently high insurance. Now, the Association of British Insurers actually released a very handy October 2025 statement, so last month. And it basically condemns PAS 9980. And they write this: insurers price their risk based on PAS 9980, which, although seeks to improve the safety of the building, it still allows a significant risk of fire spread and damage to the building to remain if remediation is not undertaken fully, as PAS 9980 allows. And they say unless it's the remediations are undertaken to a property protection standard, it would continue to be reflected in risk-based pricing, which basically means the ABI has rejected PAS 9980. And interestingly, the ABI also write that we previously suggested the UK government should include an annex to PAS 9980, which outlines the insurer's property protection considerations in assessing risk, i.e. take off the banned combustible material that's banned on new buildings. So that's very helpful that the ABI have done that. And then another piece of good news is, and remember, our campaign is all about getting backing, really, for all the things we're saying about PAS 9980.
Quite so.
So another very interesting party is the National Fire Chiefs Council, which basically, let me just grab the quote from it, because so they say the Building Safety Act, and this is the big fire chiefs organization that basically represents all the fire brigades in the country. So they said the funding in the Building Safety Act is fragmented and inconsistent. Current schemes often cover only cladding, which the fire chiefs say is leaving other serious defects unaddressed.
Right.
With multiple funding streams and varying eligibility by tenure, height, and materials, many buildings remain in limbo. So we've got the National Fire Chiefs Council, we've got the Association of British Insurers. And the final thing I would say is, given this growing rejection of the status quo of this partial remediation standard, the people, and this is very important for the banks that are listening to this, and I know you do because I have seen many a bank clicking at my profile, to consider this. Under leasehold law, it's a very interesting situation if you don't pay your service charges as a leaseholder. It means if you're mortgaged, the bank loses 100% of the security if your 80k remediation service charge bill isn't paid by the leaseholder. So, this is a great incentive to the financial industry. Back our reforms. Do not allow yourself to have the liability of 100% loss because you're falsely thinking you can hold on to the security if a mortgagee can't pay their mortgage. You're not going to get that security because, unfortunately, leasehold law means that the freeholder, through forfeiture, receives the property and not the bank. So these remediation bills are a problem to the financial industry, and we're about to unveil just how bad that liability is, and we'll be looking at ways of doing that publicly. This is everyone's problem.
You'd have thought the banks would be rattling their sabers at this sort of thing, because they would be absolutely aware of how much liability they put upon themselves by ignoring this, or at least not supporting this. They should be pressurizing both the insurance industry and also the builders to come up to the mark. Yes.
Well, they should be pressuring the government to end this watered down standard, because ultimately what's happened here, Grenfell happened, a terrible, terrible tragedy, a loss of life of 72. After the Lacanau house fire that happened prior to that, which also should have warned them, but they didn't listen. What they've done is, instead of taking the lessons of Grenfell, the Morbic recommendations from the Grenfell inquiry, what they've done is they've watered down the liability to the construction industry. They've managed the anger that the public could have exhibited over Grenfell, and they've turned it into a way of vilifying all the people they've chosen to exclude in primary legislation, as we saw with Lord Gove when we had our session in Parliament.
Yes, he didn't understand that. At the last possible second,
yes,
he stood up and basically shanghaied the whole affair.
Well, he claimed the 1.7 million people, packed full of desperate people in below 11-meter buildings, enfranchised people, claimed they were all wealthy investors with extensive property portfolios. Well, my friend Amanda, who took her life, and didn't have an extensive property portfolio. And I would say a very large percentage of that 1.7 million do not have any wealth of that nature. So, he did it to cost the votes. But my point is, this is liability limiting legislation, and we as a society, and it's not just our country, we've got problems in Australia as well, possibly other jurisdictions. We have to say, should the consumer be protected from building defects, or are we as a society going to move to a model where the builders do what they can and the consumer pays for the rest of the fix, which could ruin them?
Well, it's worse, isn't it?
That's the question.
The builders are therefore allowed state-sanctioned cutting of corners, because that means,
yes,
if you erect a property and it's not quite up to snuff, then the consumer is left to bring up the shortfall. That seems preposterous.
And we've also got two remediation standards. We've got this watered down PAS 9980 standard, but if you go to court and use the Building Safety Act, you can get a proper remediation done. But I've just found out to do that will cost us £500,000. So your access to a full remediation is prevented by a massive legal financial barrier. Right. So we're facing a question at the moment is, do I go and represent Royal Artillery Keys in the court and take my chance? I think that's probably what we will do. But it
only works if you could get some sort of ruling on costs.
Well, it's the cost of the lawyers. It's a difficult one. I mean, that they should, that if that's their rate, that's their rate. But I think the government shouldn't have gone via the courts. And of course, our legislation, the House of Lords, deliberately ignores the courts. It doesn't need a court. You don't have to pay money to use our scheme, because it is a consumer protection, just like you have with cars. The manufacturer recalls the cars and you don't go to court over it. And that's what we need, because ironically, we were told when we were working with the Building Safety Bill team that there is a remedy through the courts, and it's not right to say that your scheme is the only way. Well, we're seeing it play out now, that we're actually being prevented by this court route, and that's by design. Again, I come back to this idea that the solution is to limit the liability to the construction industry whilst taking the political heat off a tragedy. And that's basically what we need to change, and which we will be.
What's the general sense of feeling in RAQ at the moment? Well, is there a feeling that this is an injustice that needs righting, or are people pulling away and saying, "Oh no, can't we just get on with it and let sleeping dogs lie"?
No, you very cleverly there, Gareth, highlighted exactly all views of RAQ. They fall into those two camps. You've got three potentially. One is like, don't want to know, please let it end. Well, the other is a more militant camp that says, do not do anything. The scaffolding's going up, as you've seen. Don't mess this up. But they want to believe that when it's done, it will be fully done. And then you've got us that are trying to, my camp, which is basically trying to get a remediation order and try and get the thing done properly. And of course, that creates a conflict with the other two camps, because the ones that don't want to do anything would prefer we don't do anything, and the ones that are trying to just stop the remediation being messed up and just making up things around, it gives the impression that I'm going to mess it all up, which I'm not. I'm just going to try and extend what gets done. But these are the kind of real issues that we're facing with a partial standard. And why should there be two standards of remediation and one has got a massive legal price tag on? You can see where this is breaking down. But just to give a positive point on this, we're going to be taking this forward in the remediation bill next year, and there's going to be a series of new measures that we're going to be taking to build up that lobbying support. So I've mentioned two breakthroughs: the ABI, biggest insurance body in Britain, and the National Fire Chiefs Council, two big vested interests in not agreeing with the government line, not protecting the builders. They've got a vested interest in their own safety in terms of the fire brigade, and in terms of the insurers, they're holding the risk, so a big financial liability. So we bring the banks in and we get them on board, and then I think we can get consensus around the amendments we want to put in, not just from parliamentarians, but from big vested interests that have got the lobbying clout to take on the clout of the builders who are going to be obviously fighting back. And so we have a very exciting year coming up. We'll be doing this carefully, and we'll be doing all kinds of events and promotions. And I do believe we may even have a bit more music from you, Gareth.
Well, exactly. I'm going to create new music. Also, hopefully, we'll have a musical event towards in the beginning of next year to talk about to promote this more carefully. So if you come along to that, absolutely. And that'll be in where will that be? That'll be in probably in London. Was that?
Yes. Yeah. What we want ideally is people to come together, have speeches, and have a real sense that as a movement of society, getting around consumer protection is something we don't have to dream for. It's you're staying in this house asleep for 6 to 8 hours a day, aren't you? You're putting your trust in the building.
Right.
And as a society, do we want to have unsafe buildings or not? It's a simple question, and this music festival will basically celebrate the fact that people are saying no to the corporate interest, no to the corporate protectionism of society in the forms of parliament, and yes to solutions that actually solve problems instead of them being explained away as only solutions for wealthy investors, as courtesy of Lord Gove. So we can invite him as well.
Well, good. And I know my band Encrypted Love will be there. Plus, I'll be DJing and playing some tracks, including Big Bad Builders in full. I don't think anybody's heard the whole.
No, exclusive.
Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Right. I mean, I think just to add what we're speaking about is to try and get people to engage where things are becoming increasingly important. We've had the Renters' Rights Act now become it is official law. Many of the changes aren't going to take place until May the 1st. Now, the full details of what basically those that are renting properties out are going to have to adhere to hasn't been released. They've got 6 months before the introduction, but they don't know what is being introduced. They don't have the full measure of that. But one of the biggest aspects to this is the removal of one of the key elements where owners of properties could actually remove their clients. Now, this was a section sort of 21, which had something which had to go through court. And the big problem is with removing the section 21 is going to impose yet more work on top of the courts. Now, the courts are failing miserably. They are months and months and months and months behind. So when we actually look at what Steve's been speaking about there, and there are going to be increased cases for liabilities because of the severe denial of builders so far about their responsibility. But it's a proven fact. We know from the results that the builders are responsible. You can't hide behind that responsibility. And more to the point, the councils need to be aware of this as well. because they're agreeing with builders. They're agreeing with the construction people, even in the case of Royal Artillery Quays, even against what their building inspectors are saying. The building inspectors are saying it's unsafe. Councillors, by almost in their entirety, certainly all the Labour councillors, no, ignore all that. That's not the case at all. Now, one hopes that it doesn't come to some severity, but those guys as well are responsible, as was shown at Grenfell.
Right.
One of the reasons why it's not being put to bed, because the council is seriously responsible as a consequence of all of everything else that happened. So we've got finance people, we've got councils that need to be looking at this, and particularly those banks. You look how many mortgages are not being made available because of the failure of the standards that are being sort of, these properties are being remediated. They call it remediated. They're sort of pasted up. It's a sort of almost like a sort of cut and paste job, but unfortunately we didn't paste over all the bits that we should have pasted over. So
it's what my father would call titivating around the edges. It's not really fixing it. It's more covering up the bad stuff, so we don't have to look at it anymore.
It's a lot of people need to look at this. There's a serious cost going to be imposed upon people if they just want to keep their backs. They want to try and hide from it. I'm telling you, there's some serious monies going down the drain, and there's some serious losses. And it's not just going to be, sadly, the property owners. They shouldn't be losing out, the property owners, but it will be an awful lot of financial institutions. Can they actually afford the failures that they're about to be sort of brought out?
All right. Well, look, thank you so much once again for that update from RAQ, Steve, and Hamish for putting this together in the first place. And while you're out there, look, it may sound like we talk doom and gloom, but we're not. We actually have hope. We have hope on the horizon because there is a projected standard that we can be adhered to, which will provide the support and the backbone needed for all of this. Unfortunately, we have to push and fight hard to get that, and that involves putting it out there so that people can understand what's at stake. In quote someone, it's not one life that needs to be saved, it's all lives, and it's a potential risk that cannot continue. Thank you so much once again, Steve and Hamish, for helping put this together, and to you guys out there for watching, and you know who you are, and to the council that are watching, please remove your hands from underneath your tuchus and actually do something about this. And to any politicians looking at this, please be on the side of the right side of history. Remember that you will be judged further on down the line by whether or not you were in support, whether you were against, or whether you did nothing. Remember, the old expression, evil only perpetuates when good men and women sit around and do nothing. So let's not have you be one of those. Be a hero. Stand up. Help this make sense to the future. Remember, we're looking for the future of this country. The children, the people are going to be around here long after Hamish, and Steve are gone. They're the ones going to inherit this mess. Let's make sure what they inherit is a standard that they can get their first homes without worrying it's going to burn down while they sleep. It's a silly thing to say, but it needs to be said.
Very serious. Serious.
I'm going to sign off. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please keep your feet on the ground. Please reach for the stars, and there's work towards a better future. We don't have to worry about mental health because we're worrying about safety standards. Until next week, goodbye.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll polish through the moon, but their word always fails.